Welcome to The Drinking Rethink, a podcast designed to help you take a fresh look at alcohol and the role it plays in your life. Whether you're starting to question your drinking habits or simply curious about making changes, this podcast offers a balanced perspective without the pressure of having to think you need to quit entirely.
In each episode, we dive into real conversations about the role of alcohol in your mind, body, and career. We explore topics like reducing stress without relying on alcohol, navigating social situations with ease, and finding satisfaction in making mindful choices. You'll hear relatable stories, expert insights, and practical tips to help you with your own drinking rethink. If you're a regular drinker, it's important to check in with a medical professional before making any big changes to your drinking patterns.
Welcome back to The Drinking Rethink. I'm Kath, joined by my friend and co-host Chris. And today we're talking about an issue that's been hiding in plain sight, the true impact of alcohol in the workplace.
From Friday long lunches to after-work drinks, alcohol is deeply embedded in workplace culture. But beyond the social aspect, what is it really costing businesses and employees? Today, we're breaking down the financial, productivity, and safety consequences of alcohol in Australian workplaces.
We'll explore statistics on absenteeism and presenteeism, uncover the industries with the biggest drinking problem, and discuss what businesses can do to shift workplace culture. If you've ever had to cover for a colleague who's called in sick after a big night or felt the pressure to drink at work events, then this is the episode for you.
We'll explore the industries where drinking is most common and discuss how alcohol affects workplace safety and culture. Finally, we'll also talk about what businesses can do to rethink their approach to alcohol in the workplace.
I spent over 20 years in the PR and media industries where alcohol was deeply embedded in the culture, whether it was networking events, open bars, or Friday afternoon drinks. While I did sometimes overdrink at work events, I was actually always conscious of protecting my professional reputation, and I did try to keep it in check. That said, there were many Monday mornings when I'd turn up after a heavy Sunday drinking session feeling awful, but no one would have known. It was a normalised part of the industry, and looking back, I can see how much of it was simply expected rather than questioned.
Same here. I worked in high-pressure corporate environments where grabbing a drink with the team was always part of the job, but I remember realising that some of my worst decision-making happened after work functions when alcohol was involved. And I certainly wasn't alone. So many people were struggling with the impact of drinking after their work, but not many people were talking about it.
Let's start with some numbers here. Research shows that alcohol-related absenteeism costs Australian businesses $1.2 billion annually. Wow. With 7.4 million workdays lost each year. Wow, that is a huge productivity drain when you think about it.
Those numbers are crazy. And that's just absenteeism. People calling in sick because of a hangover. What about the ones who show up but are still feeling rough and underperforming? That was me a lot of the time.
Yes, I remember many of those days because I never called in sick. I was absolutely in presenteeism sometimes. Now, this is where things can get really interesting. Presenteeism, where people turn up to work but aren't operating at full capacity. This costs businesses even more than absenteeism. One study found that 11% of Australian employees admitted to being inefficient at work due to drinking the night before.
And let's be real, how many of us have seen somebody struggling through a meeting just hoping no one notices?
I think it's really interesting because obviously there are some industries where we see more of a drinking problem than others. So where is this issue most common? Not surprisingly, hospitality and construction are at the top of the list. In hospitality, up to 90% of workers report drinking during or after their shifts.
And the corporate world, of course, not far behind. 70% of Australian finance professionals believe drinking is a key part of their industry's culture. And in law, late night drinks with colleagues and clients are a rite of passage. And it doesn't just affect the drinker. Like a third of workers have said before that having to cover for a colleague due to drinking can add to the costs of businesses each year.
Yeah, and there's even a darker side. 18% of employees have experienced verbal abuse, exclusion, or unwanted sexual attention from a colleague who has been drinking at work. Alcohol in the workplace doesn't just affect productivity, it changes culture, and not just in a good way.
Yeah, that's hard to hear as well. Like there's so many examples that you can see if you go looking through the news, especially around Christmas party time, where that's still happening and it's just not good enough. A national study found that having a clear alcohol policy can help reduce high-risk drinking by up to 39%. But those policies are only focusing on alcohol testing quite often, and those don't have as much impact.
I know the question is really what type of alcohol policy does work? I mean, a big game changer is making sure that you are being more inclusive and normalising alcohol-free alternatives and providing education on workplace drinking culture. And by that, setting expectations for what type of drinking, what type of behaviour is expected. And it's here that we really see an opportunity for corporate leaders to stand up and put this on the agenda.
All right, well, let's, as always, shift now to some takeaways for you, the listeners, and we'll break it down. Like if you're in a workplace where alcohol is part of the culture, here's a few steps that you might want to take. If you're an employer, review your workplace policies and have a think. Are they effective or are they just a box-ticking exercise? If you're an employee, start small. Next time there's a work event, try skipping alcohol and see how it changes your experience. If you feel pressure to drink, have a go-to response ready. Something like, not tonight, I've got an early morning, is a simple way to set a boundary.
We would love to hear your experience with alcohol in the workplace. If you've got any questions or situations that you'd like us to talk about, please let us know. Have you felt pressure to drink at work events? DM us at The Drinking Rethink on Instagram.
And if you know someone who needs to hear this, send them the episode and share it. The more we talk about this, the more we can help shift workplace culture together and for the better.
We hope you've enjoyed the podcast today on the hidden costs of alcohol in the workplace. And please join us next week for the next episode of The Drinking Rethink.